Hi there, r/TIFU. TIFU by destroying the entirety of my family for only $99. Throwaway account. We've all been seeing the recent craze of DNA testing and whatnot. So my dad and I decided to jump in the bandwagon and we bought two from 23andMe. We got our results back a few days ago and I went into the DNA relatives section to check out my matches. At the top it listed my dad as only sharing 29.2% DNA with me and being predicted to be a half brother, which is impossible. This didn't make sense to me since we also shared a paternal haplogroup and we just look so alike. So he was definitely my father. My cousin also had taken the test a while back and she shared 24.6% with me. Also predicted to be my half sibling. We're supposed to share around 12%. Being first cousins, I couldn't think of a genetic relationship that would explain what I was seeing and I had doubts in the accuracy of the percentages. So I made this post on r/23andMe asking for help. Basically, the shared percentages are extremely accurate and highly unlikely to be false. The only realistic explanation for what I was seeing was that my uncle, my cousin's father and my dad's brother, is my father. Reality hit me in the face like a flying bag of bricks. All the dots lined up and I felt a sense of loss. I sat in my room for an hour just in shock and then I had a feeling of anger come over me. I needed some ducking answers. Without even thinking, I rushed out of my room and confronted my mother downstairs. My mom is a businesswoman and is often away on business trips. She had no idea my dad and I had done one of these tests since she was away on a trip and just got back. My mother and I never had a traditional relationship. She was always focused on her work and my dad ended up mostly raising me. I left her there and went back into my room. I called my cousin, now half sibling, and told her everything. She ended the call screaming, "Dad, now uncle," then came home and stumbled into my room asking what's wrong with mom. I told him everything too. He didn't say anything after calming down. He left the room and I locked the door. For the next few hours, I heard my entire family fall apart outside my door. My parents got into a heated argument and my grandparents rushed over to see what was going on. My aunt-in-law and David showed up shortly later and I'm pretty sure I heard my dad and David get into some physical fight. Utter chaos. I feel like ducking shit. It's not my fault but I can't help feeling that this is all because of me. If I had spent my ducking birthday money on something else, none of this would have happened. But another part of me is glad to know the truth. I'm too scared to go outside. I don't even know what the outcome was. The only noise I hear in the house now is the occasional sobbing coming from my mother. And I sure my dad is out of the house. Duck my life. TLDR. Mom and uncle, both having spouses of their own, ducked, made me, and proceed to not tell anyone. I take a DNA test 19 years later and it all comes crashing down. I've locked myself in my room and I'm pretty sure my family has ceased to exist outside. Update. Reddit.com link. TIF update by destroying the entirety of my family for only $99. Precursor to the whole event. Reddit.com link. Original post. Reddit.com link. Thanks for the support guys. Means a lot. Back to where we were. I eventually left my room. Called my dad and he was actually at the hospital with my grandmother. She couldn't handle the situation and had a heart attack right when she went home. I knew my mother was still in the house, but I left her there again, without saying a word and went to the hospital. I got to the hospital, saw my grandmother, she's in stable condition, and then sat down with my dad to talk. First thing we told each other was that this situation didn't change our relationship. He was still my father and I was still his son. I got the confirmation of my dad and David getting into some altercation. Dad told me he ducked him up really hard. My mother had told my dad that she was drunk and David raped her. The only reason she had not told anyone was out of fear of destroying my father's family. Dad then suggested going to the police. She refused and then started to slightly change her story, making my dad doubt her claim. That's when David and everyone else came over. David claimed my mother was lying to save her own ass, and that they had consensual sex. David's wife is filing for divorce since this occurred after they were married. My cousin is holding up alright, although she's still pretty shaken up. My dad and I have been staying with my grandparents for the past week until we figure out what to do. Any advice would help. Thank you. Sorry if this sounds rushed. I typed this on my way to class. TLDR. Grandma had heart attack. Mom claimed David raped her. David denies that. Cousin's mother is filing for divorce. Dad and I are staying with my grandparents for now. TIFU by having the FBI pull me out of class. Obligatory. This happened a few months ago. This was easily the most stressful roller coaster of an event that I hope I ever experience. The scene is freshman year of college. I'm a wide-eyed innocent student having a great time away from his parents. I've made some good friends and enjoy messing with them. As such, I decide to pull a little prank on them. It starts with a simple idea. I'm going to Ohio on a business trip. I was actually going to lunch with my parents. But this was a more fun story. I hadn't initially thought out this entire prank, but just like high school presentations, I decided to wing it. Every so often I would go on these out-of-state business trips, but I stayed vague as to what my business was. I told them that it was somewhat illegal, but in more of a gray area. My friends were incredibly intrigued by my illicit endeavors, and as time went on, they began to ask more questions about this business. I still had little to no plan for this ordeal, but boy did I milk it. I had them convinced that there were overseas bank accounts with millions of dollars in them and that I had several people involved in this business. At one point I told them the story of how one of my employees got caught trespassing on government property and I had to pay $10,000 to bail him out. I would accidentally send a picture of several $1,000s, claiming it was meant to go to someone else with no other explanation. I figured I covered my bases and sent the email. It was very well worded and quite convincing to a group of people who already believed I was running a secret business. Sure enough, my friends bought it hook, line and sinker. One of them replied, informing Bill that she didn't know anything about my business, other than that I mentioned it occasionally. 3 friends ignored the email altogether, and one texted me saying she didn't believe it. The next 3 days were interesting. I had several classes with these people and finals were upon us, so skipping class was not a good idea. But I had to make them believe I was on the run. Fortunately, some of these classes had several hundred students and I was able to sit far away from our usual spots. The smaller classes I avoided altogether. Meals were eaten at odd times, and at one point I had to hide in the shower because a friend was in my dorm. I had no contact with the prankies outside the occasional text. Fast forward to the Thursday I decided would be the day to reveal my shenanigans. I'm walking into class when these 2 men in suits stop me just inside the door. They ask me if I am short tail 359 and upon confirming this they tell me they need to speak with me outside. We walk downstairs to the building's lobby where I am greeted by 2 more men who have guns at their sides. All 4 of them hold up their badges in dramatic fashion and one introduces himself as Agent Michael Scarn with the FBI. Fake name obviously. It was approximately at this point that I peed a little bit as I realized that I was in some trouble. Agent Scarn, do you know why we're here? Short tail 359. No, but I have a pretty good guess. I proceeded to explain the email I sent out along with a brief summary of the genesis of my prank. 50 minutes of questioning later and I had given Agent Scarn the password to the email account. Signed an agreement saying I won't access the account or I'd face several charges. Given a written statement of the events. Crapped my pants twice. And completely missed my class. Agent Scarn gave me his business card and said they would be in touch. I go back to my dorm and try to come to terms with the fact that I may have ruined my future career and life altogether. All my friends had a good laugh at my expense, but not before I had a good laugh at their expense for believing my stupid business story. After a long sleepless weekend I get a call from a sergeant at the police station. He says that he needs to meet with me and we arrange a time. I go down to the station and for 10 minutes all he does is yell at me and tell me what a stupid idea this was. Now I'm a pretty good kid. Never got in trouble in school. On a roll. Never so much as a speeding ticket. So having a police officer yell at me was a new experience. He finally calms down enough for me to explain that this is an animal and that it was supposed to be an innocent prank. He believes me and tells me that regardless, they're going to charge me with criminal impersonation, which is a class A misdemeanor. My court date is set for a couple weeks from now and that was the end of it. When he does, a smile immediately dawns his face and he begins to chuckle. At this point I'm relieved enough to let out a giggle of my own since I can feel the entire courtroom wondering what I've done. The judge tells me that he will expunge my charge and asks me if I will ever do something like this again. I assure him that I will not, and he says, with a smile on his face, "You know son, everyone in this courtroom is wondering who you impersonated. But I'm going to do something that you should have done and keep my mouth shut." I thank him and sheepishly walk out of the room. Later that day I took the required documents back to the court and had the whole charge expunged in a matter of hours. It was easily the most stressful month of my life and was not worth it at all. But I am now able to walk around with an FBI agent's card in my wallet and keep a fond memory of being laughed at by a judge. Too long didn't read. I play a prank on my friends that ends with me being questioned by 4 FBI agents for almost an hour and charged with criminal impersonation. Edit. Here's a link to Agent Scarn's business card. It's a little faded since it sits in my wallet. imgur.com link. Edit 2. Spelling. TIFU by kicking my son. This happened a few weeks ago. My 6-year-old son came running into my home office the other day and said, demandingly, "Dad, kick me." So I did. Hear me out, please. The kick was a 3-stroke 10 on firmness. Not gentle, but not painful. He's a kid. He likes to play fight, and as he's an only child, I feel like I need to provide a bit of rough and tumble so that he can learn boundaries. I also want him to lose some battles, and to learn to roll with the punches. Anyway, I performed a front kick whilst making the Bruce Lee noise. I trust that you know the one. My son recoiled. He looked shocked, sad and disappointed, all rolled into one. He didn't cry, but it was close. He blurted out, "I said kiss me." Oops, TLDR. I misheard my son, which resulted in me kicking him. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.